Father, help us along that until you return. Help us, fill us with your Spirit that we may be overcomers, and to help us prepare for the journey ahead. In Yeshua's name we pray, amen. All right. So some of you were here back in April when Eddie came to speak. I don't know how many were here to hear Eddie speak back in April. Okay. One of the topics he talked about was where are we at in prophecy today? This seems awful loud. And he touched on the topic of the greater Exodus. And now this isn't a salvation issue topic, okay? So we have different views. But as the bride prepares herself for his return, it's kind of an important topic. So just to show of hands, again, we have people on both sides of the aisle here. Let me start with, how many have never heard of the greater Exodus? Raise your hand. Okay, everybody here has heard. Okay. How many feel that journey is going to be instantaneous? You can raise your hand. This isn't we got a few. Okay. How many thinks it's going to be a long journey? Okay. I'm not here to tell you which way is okay, but I will tell you what, I'm going to do a little recap of what Eddie had brought. And it is interesting that this journey back to the land, the Bible actually has a lot to say about it. And so we're going to get into it, and I need the clicker. I'm going to need a clicker. So the title of this message is The Overcomer's Journey Back to the Land. Now, if you were here, a few weeks ago, we talked about who are the overcomers, because it was important to know, because the overcomers are the ones that are going to make it back to the land, okay? You have to be an overcomer. So it requires some effort on our part to prepare hearts and be ready and prepared to sanctify ourselves for that journey. So, the overcomer's journey back to the land, also known as the greater Exodus. Is the greater Exodus scriptural? Is the original Exodus story a future prophecy of a greater physical Exodus back to the promised land? In other words, what happened in Egypt when Israel came out in the book of Exodus, is that a prophecy of our journey for our trip back to the land? Or will our journey back to the land be instantaneous, where our mortal bodies will be changed in the twinkling of an eye and caught up in the clouds to forever be with the Lord? So there's two views. So we're going to talk first about the journey back to the land prophecies. I just picked about 3 or 4 of them. They're kind of long, but we kind of got to read through them to get the context of the story. Okay? So, and then we're going to do an overview of 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 4. That's where the scripture comes into play, where our mortal bodies will be changed in the twinkling of an eye. So we'll cover a little bit of that. We'll cover the thematic connections of the word Zion to the greater Exodus. This is something that Eddie pointed out when he was here, so I did a little research on that. It was quite interesting. And then Eddie gave the parallel construct between Matthew 24 and Revelation 6, and that's what we're going to try to focus on today. And then the last one is the end of the exile. So in your mind, what's that journey going to look like? You think it'll look like this? I think many of us are thinking that. It could be. I don't know. But that would be a pretty nice, well, with gas prices today, I don't know if we could afford to go back to the land. Okay? But, so, let's look at some prophecies concerning our journey back to the land. So is the greater Exodus scriptural? Is the original Exodus story a future prophecy of a greater physical Exodus back to the promised land? Now, before I go through these, when Israel came out of Egypt, what was one of Yahweh's goals among the nations that he wanted to accomplish in that, and bringing his people out of Israel, or out of Egypt? What is one of the things that Yahweh wanted all the nations to know? That he is God. That he is the only one. Because they believed in many gods. And you know, the plagues systematically disproved every god that the Egyptians believed in. So, in our last journey back to the land, why would it be any different? If God's desire is that all men would be saved and that none should perish, would he not also, in these last days, give all the nations that same opportunity? I think so. Okay, so some of the prophecies. Jeremiah 3, verses 12 through 18. There's a lot of scriptures here, so I'm going to go kind of fast. He says, go and proclaim these words toward the north, and say, return, thou backsliding Israel, saith Yahweh, and I will not cause my anger to fall upon you. I will be merciful, saith Yahweh, and I will not keep anger forever. Only acknowledge thine iniquity, that thou hast transgressed against Yahweh thy God, and hast scattered thy ways to the strangers under every green tree, and have not obeyed my voice, says Yahweh. Turn, O backsliding Israel, saith Yahweh, for I am married unto you. I will take you one of a city and two of a family, and I will bring you to Zion. And I will give you pastors according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. And it shall come to pass, when you be multiplied and increased in the land in those days, says Yahweh, they shall no more say, the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, neither shall it come to mind, neither shall they remember it, neither shall they visit it, neither shall that be done any more. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of Yahweh, and all nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of Yahweh, to Jerusalem, neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel. And they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers. It's a future prophecy, right? We're still waiting for that day, right? Okay. Jeremiah 31, verses 1 through 25. At that same time, says Yahweh, will I be the God of all families of Israel, and they shall be my people. Thus says Yahweh, the people which were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness, even Israel, when I went to cause him to rest. So you notice how often he refers back to the story of Exodus in future prophecies of going back to the land. And Yahweh hath appeared of old unto me, yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love, therefore with loving kindness have I drawn thee. Again I will build thee, and thou shalt be built. A virgin of Israel shall again be adorned with tabrets, and shall go forth in the dances of them that make merry. Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria, the planter shall plant, and shall eat them as a common thing. Sorry. That wasn't tracking well. For there shall be a day that the watchman upon Mount Ephraim shall cry, arise, let us go up to Zion unto Yahweh our God. For thus says Yahweh, sing with the gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Publish, praise, and say, Yahweh, save thy people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them from the north country, and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return thither. They shall come with weeping, and with supplications will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. I got a really bad echo in my ear. Verse 10, hear the word of Yahweh, O you nations, and declare in the isles afar off, and say, he that scattered Israel will gather him, and will keep him as a shepherd doth his flock. For Yahweh hath redeemed Jacob, and ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he. Therefore shall they come and sing in the height of Zion, and shall flow together to the goodness of Yahweh, for wheat, and for wine, and for oil, and for the young flock and of the herd. And their soul shall be as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all. Now, some of these terms that we're reading here, the prophecy of the return, the journey back to the land, is spoken of in Revelation in this last seals. So it's interesting. It's mentioning the same phraseology. Okay. Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old together, for I will turn their mourning into joy, and will comfort them and make them rejoice from their sorrow. And I will satiate the soul of the priest with fatness, and my people shall be satisfied with my goodness, says Yahweh. So thus says Yahweh, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. So thus says Yahweh, refrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears. For thy work shall be rewarded, says Yahweh, and they shall come again from the land of the enemy. And there is hope in your end, says Yahweh, and thy children shall come again to their own border. For I have surely heard Ephraim bemoaning himself. Thou hast chastised me. I was chastised as a bullock unaccustomed to the yoke. Turn thou me, and I shall be turned, for thou art Yahweh my God. Surely, after I was turned, I repented, and after I was instructed, I smote upon my thigh. I was ashamed, yea, even confounded, because I did bear the reproach of my youth. Is Ephraim my dear son? Is he a pleasant child? For since I spake against him, I do earnestly remember him. Still, therefore my bowels are troubled for him. I will surely have mercy upon him, says Yahweh. Set up the waymarks. Now this word here, we're going to connect it to something very interesting that's connected to this journey back home. All right? So set up thy waymarks, make thee high heaps, set thine heart toward the highway, even the way which thou wentest. Turn again, O Virgin of Israel, turn again to these cities. How long wilt thou go about, O backsliding daughter? For Yahweh hath created a new thing in the earth. A woman shall compass a man. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, as yet they shall use this speech in the land of Judah and in the cities thereof, when I shall bring again their captivity. Yahweh bless you, and O habitation of justice and mountain of holiness. And there shall dwell in Judah itself, and in the cities thereof together, husbandmen and they that go forth with flocks. For I have satiated the weary soul, I have replenished every sorrowful soul. Future prophecy? Yes? Isaiah 49, 1 through 18. Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from afar. Yahweh hath called me from the womb. From the bowels of my mother hath he made me mention of my name. And he hath made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he hath hid me. And made me a polished shaft, in his quiver hath he hid me. And said unto me, Thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. Then I said, I have labored in vain, I have spent my strength for naught, and in vain. Surely my judgment is with Yahweh, and my work with my God. And now says Yahweh, that formed me from the womb, to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of Yahweh, and my God shall be my strength. And he said, It is a light thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give you a light to the Gentiles, that you may be my salvation unto the ends of the earth. For thus says Yahweh, the Redeemer of Israel and his Holy One, to him whom man despises, to him whom the nation abhorreth, to a servant of rulers, kings shall see and arise, princesses also shall worship, because Yahweh that is faithful, and the Holy One of Israel, he shall choose you.
Thus says Yahweh, in acceptable time have I heard you, and in the day of salvation have I helped you. I will preserve you. I will give thee for a covenant of the people to establish the earth, to cause to inherit the desolate heritage, that thou mayest say to the prisoners, go forth, to them that are in darkness, show yourselves, that they shall feed in the ways, and their pastures shall be in all high places. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither shall the heat nor the sun smite them. For he hath mercy on them, shall lead them, even by springs of water shall he guide them. This is terms also used in Revelation in chapter, I believe it's chapter 6 and 7. He says, and I will make all my mountains a way, and my highways shall be exalted. Behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. Sing, O heavens, and be joyful, O earth, and break forth into singing, O mountains, for Yahweh hath comforted his people, and will have mercy upon his afflicted. But Zion said, Yahweh hath forsaken me, and my Lord hath forgotten me. Can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget. Behold, I have graven you upon the palms of my hands. Thy walls are continually before me. Thy children shall make haste. The destroyers and they that made thee way shall go forth from thee. Lift up your eyes round about, and behold, all these gather themselves together and come to you. As I live, says Yahweh, thou shalt surely clothe thee with them all, as with an ornament, and bind them on thee as a bride doeth. Future prophecy. And the last text, and there's many more, but these are four that were core to this idea of our journey back to the land and what it looks like. In Zephaniah 3, chapter 3, verses 8 through 20. It says, therefore wait ye upon me, says Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them my indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. Now, I want you to think about this prophecy right here. He says, wait on me until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them my indignation. What does this sound like to you? What does this sound like to you? Judgments? And where is the place that he's going to gather them to pour out his indignation? Does Gog and Magog come to mind? The lands and kings of the north? And what is their intent? What is the intent of the nations as they gather together there in Jerusalem? What is their intent? To destroy Israel, to destroy you. Because who's going to be in Israel at that time? Is it just those that are there today? Or could it be those that he has gathered from all the nations? If you remember the story in Egypt, he brought Israel out. Pharaoh gave them permission, but then he changed his mind, and he went after them with his armies to destroy them. And he had them cornered. The people thought it was all lost. They were goners. And what happened? Yahweh rose up, and he destroyed the armies of the Egyptians. The same thing's going to happen here in the end. So I think this is a prophecy of those nations coming together to Jerusalem to try to destroy God's people. So just a thought. For when or then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him with one consent. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my suppliants, and even the daughter of my dispersed shall bring my offering. In that day shalt thou not be ashamed for all thy doings, wherein thou hast transgressed against me. For then I will take away out of the midst of you them that rejoice in pride, and you shall no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. I will also leave in the midst of you an afflicted and poor people, and they shall trust in the name of Yahweh. The remnant of Israel shall not do iniquity, nor speak lies, neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth. For they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Sing, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O Israel, be glad and rejoice with all your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. Yahweh hath taken away your judgments. He has cast out your enemy. The King of Israel, even Yahweh, is in the midst of you. Thou shalt not see evil anymore. I think, again, this is a prophecy of when Yahweh rises up to destroy all those nations that came against Israel. And his people are going to rejoice. And I think also it's at this time, again, this is just my opinion, that will be the time, either right before he destroys the nations or right after, when the first resurrection will occur. Because the physical people first have to journey back to the land. And then the enemies are going to come against us. And then Yahweh's going to rise up. And I say, where do you get this idea? Well, if you remember, when Israel came out of Egypt, they were backed up against the sea. Pharaoh's right behind them. What other place did they have to go? They had to go through the sea. So they went down into the water. They went down into the sea. But God had split the waters. You know, Paul made a comment that how they were all baptized in the sea. They all went in, all right. But they all came out. So that coming out of that water, that rising up, like baptism, when you're baptized, what does it represent? A rebirth. It's a rebirth. I was just trying to put, a timeline to when, the end of the exile is going to happen, when the resurrection is going to happen. Okay, verse 16. So it says, in that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, fear not, and to Zion, let not your hands be slack. Yahweh thy God is in the midst of you. He is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over you with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over you with singing. He is going to rejoice over us with singing. I will gather them that are sorrowful of the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict you. I appreciated the word that was given by, is it Amy? It goes well with these prophecies. He says, at that time I will undo all that afflict you, and I will save her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. He says, I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. So the outcast of Israel, they're back in the land. And he says, all the nations will give you praise where you had been put to shame. Is that not Yahweh's way of showing the world that I am Yahweh? I am the only God. I save from the utmost parts of the earth. And at that time I will bring you again, even in the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all the people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, says Yahweh. Okay, so those are 4 major prophecies concerning our journey back to the land. Now, an overview of 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 4. I'm not going to read all these scriptures for the sake of time. But it's interesting, when you read these passages, these are the passages that, I used to believe that before I believed in another Exodus, I thought, well, I'm just waiting for his return. It could happen any day, any hour, and I'm just going to be changed. I'm going to go up in the air and be with him forevermore. Had no idea about this journey back to the land. Even all the scriptures that we read about it, it never processed with me. And so what's the context of these? It's in 2 places that I have in here, 1 Corinthians 15. And I'll just read a few of the verses and then skip down. But it's interesting when you read these passages that talk about being changed, it is in the context of a resurrection, not the regathering of his children back to the land. The resurrection occurs after he gathers his people back to the land. And so looking at the context here, Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 is saying that, hey, at the time, the sect of the Sadducees, they didn't believe in a resurrection. Okay, they believed that, the good in life was on the earth. Okay, and so they became very corrupt, and money was a big thing to them. They didn't believe in a resurrection. Okay, so that was something that was permeating in the church, in the body of Messiah then. So Paul's disputing that. Okay, and he says, I declared unto you the gospel which I preached unto you. You received, and wherein you stand. And he goes down and he says that, that when Yeshua was raised from the dead, that the 12 saw him, that the 500 saw him, and James saw him, and at last Paul saw him. And going down to verse 12, he says, now if Christ be preached that he rose from the dead, how say some among you that there is no resurrection? So this was the context. And so he goes on down. I'm just going to skip on down to the end here. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither doth corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. So this is where that text comes from, but it's in the context of a resurrection. And there were some that were teaching there was no resurrection. It's not in the context of the regathering of Israel back to the land. But I believe this takes place, again, after we're back in the land, either right after the great battle or right before, I'm not sure. Okay, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Basically the same thing here. Where Paul's telling them that, he says, furthermore, then we beseech you, brethren, exhort you by the Lord Yeshua, that as ye have received of us, how ye ought to walk and please God, so you would abound more and more. Dropping down to verse 13, but I would not have you be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that you do not sorrow, not even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Yeshua will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of Yahweh, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. Now later on I'm going to touch on this concept of the last trump and how it's tied to the great Exodus. Again, this is a recap of what Eddie brought back in April. Okay, thematic connections of Zion to the greater Exodus. This word Zion or Zion has a connection in its meaning to the cloud by day, the pillar by night, the greater Exodus, and the temple or the house of God. That one word Zion is connected to all those. And Eddie brought this out. So the word Zion, or Zion, is in Strong's 6726. And it means a permanent capital, the mountain of Jerusalem, Zion. But it's the same as another Hebrew word, 6725, and it's pronounced almost the same. Instead of Zion, it's Ziyun. I hope I'm pronouncing that close. So it's pronounced almost exactly the same, and it's the same as this word. And what does this word mean? This word means a monumental or guiding pillar, a sign, a title, a waymark. Now remember when we were reading the prophecies in Jeremiah that there was that word waymark in there, right? It's connected to a guiding pillar. Now where do you remember the guiding pillar in the wilderness? There. When they came out of Egypt. There was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. So Zion has these connections to the journey back to Israel, back to the land. And dropping down to the next, let me back up a minute. So this word is the same as, it's interesting how these words are tied to a lot of different words. At 6723. Okay? I want to read a text in Jeremiah to give you some context here. So this word is used in Jeremiah. We read this already in verse 21. Let me just drop down right there in 21. Remember that? And what was the context? The context was one when God will dwell with the families of all the earth. And they shall be my people. And Yahweh said, the people which were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness, even Israel, when I went to cause him to rest. So it's connected to the journey back to the land, the Exodus. All right. And then there's that word, waymarks, in verse 21. Set up the waymarks. Make you high heaps. Set your heart toward the highway, even the way which you went. Turn again, O Virgin Israel. Turn again to your cities. Okay, now this word is the same as 6723, which is this one. I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but this is connected to a desert, a barren, dry land, a solitary place, a wilderness. And David talks about this wilderness in Psalm 78, 1 through 17, and it's about the journey out of Egypt back to the promised land. And then this word came into play, and don't ask me how. I didn't. It was in my notes, and I seem to have lost it. 5329. 5329 is from. Well, I'm just going to read what it's tied to Zion. And it means properly, it's a primitive root, properly to glitter from afar, to be eminent, especially of the temple services and its music, to be permanent. And it's tied to this Hebrew word, 53:31 right there. And this one means properly a goal. That is the bright object at a distance traveled towards. Hence, splendor, truthfulness, confidence, continually, that is to the most distant point of view. So it gives us this idea that Zion is this place that glitters. It is the goal. It is the place on a journey that we're heading to. Or the house of God, where Yahweh's going to dwell. And this is mentioned, and this word is used in 1 Chronicles 29:11. And this was when Solomon's temple was being built. So it's connected. Zion is connected to, as I mentioned before, the cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night, the journey out of Egypt, the greater Exodus, and the temple of the house of God. Just an interesting side note. All right. Okay. So the parallel construct between Matthew 24 and Revelation 6. A lot of interpretations of prophecy have come out of Matthew 24. And what's interesting, when Eddie put this together, there is a very succinct pattern of what Yeshua is mentioning in Matthew 24 and the seals in Revelation 6. So again, this is a recap of what Eddie taught on where we are in biblical prophecy and when our journey back to the land will begin. Eddie noted that Yeshua's return is tied to his role in ending the exile of his people, and that Yeshua answers the disciples' question concerning this in Matthew 24, on when the greater Exodus will begin and when their exile will be over. Now, it obviously doesn't use those terms, but that's what they understood in their culture and in their time when they asked these questions about the Messiah. Because the Messiah, one of his major roles is to end the exile of his people. That's one of his major roles. So they understood that. He used a parallel construct to show how Matthew 24 parallels with Revelation 6, which discusses the opening of the six seals, starting with the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And then the last verse in Revelation 6 makes a statement declaring the great day of the Lord has begun, which is the beginning of the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation and the greater Exodus. Again, this is just an interpretation. So let's take a look. And then in Revelation chapter 7, it describes events that are tied to the greater Exodus, including the role of the 144,000. The 144,000, if you remember, the angels that were holding the four corners, they were holding some things back. I'll just go ahead and read it so I don't misquote it. And they were told, hold on and wait till we have sealed the servants of the Most High. He said, after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor the sea, or any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. And the number of them that were sealed were 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe. It's understood that these 144,000 are the angels or messengers that Yeshua mentions in Matthew 24, where he says, I will send my angels to the four corners of the earth to gather my elect. So these 144,000 are like the one in the wilderness that led the children of Israel back to the land. But instead of just one group of people coming back to the land, they're going to be coming from all over, from the ends of the earth. But who's going to lead them? who's going to help them along the way like they had in the wilderness? Is it these 144,000? Okay, so I know I'm giving you some teasers here, but okay, so in Matthew 24, 1 through 13, and Yahshua went out and departed from the temple, and disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahshua said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately and said, Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the world? Okay, that end of the world in their mind was tied to the end of the exile. Not the end of the world as, being destroyed and there's nothing left, but the end of their exile. They've been waiting for a Messiah to come and to save them from their enemies and take them and let them have control, go back to the land and have control. That's what they were waiting for. So that was the context of their question. And so the major role of the Messiah in Hebraic understanding is the ending of the exile. The disciples also shared this idea, and therefore the context of their last question, what is a sign indicating the end of the exile? So Yeshua describes the first seal in Revelation in verses 4 and 5. And Yeshua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying that I am the Messiah, and shall deceive many. Could this be the white horse? In Revelation 6, verses 1 and 2, I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. So what is this white horse? Again, this was Eddie's interpretation, and if you ever get a chance, ask him about a vision that he knew of a man back in the 1950s concerning a future event. And this man described this dream. He did not know what it meant. But if you listen to this dream, it fits exactly. The interesting thing about prophecy, when the Bible gives you prophecy, you really don't know it's come to pass till you actually see the things that match the prophecy, okay? So this man was describing this cloud that would come over the earth, and it would infect the inhabitants thereof with a great cough, okay? So one of the interpretations of this white horse is, what does it represent? One in authority. The Latin word, and he has a crown and he has a bow. The Latin word for crown is corona. The bow comes from the Greek word toxin, and its history is tied to smearing a toxin poison on the point of an arrow. The Hebrew word for bow is to set a trap or a snare. So remember, the first thing Yahshua told the disciples, be not deceived. Be not deceived. So the thought here is, does the coronavirus and the vaccine fit the characteristics of the white horse? I mean, what's the big deal that they're forcing, and we have people here on both sides, take the vax, some haven't, okay? That's not the point of this, isn't trying to divide that. It's we logically think things through, and we measure our risks, and we try to take the path of less risk, right? So what's the whole purpose? Why is the drive to get everybody vaccinated and have everybody mask up? Why? They've never done this in the history of our nation. So what is their purpose? What is their reason? What are they trying to accomplish? And one of the big things that, if you follow money, that's I think a big part of it. You follow the money. But I think more of it is about control, to control that mind. so they can deceive. They give you some truth, and they put some untruth with it. So I think this whole thing is all about deception. This vaccine, the masks, and everything else. So I think it could fit the white horse. Be not deceived. Yahshua is described the second seal in Revelation in Matthew 24:6. He says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. The red horse. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end," again, this word end isn't in like the world just gets destroyed. It's talking about the end of the exile. Okay? And for the end of the exile to happen, there has to be the beginning of the Exodus, back to the land to end the exile. In Revelation 6:3-4, it says, "When he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, Come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him and that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. And that they should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword." So what is a red horse? Well, things associated with red in the Bible is Esau, blood. Russia and China are connected to, you got red China, you got communist Russia, red. And it could also represent World War III. Again, these are just thoughts that Eddie brought up. So does the war in Ukraine with Russia fit the characteristics of the red horse? It could. Yahshua goes on to describe the third and fourth seal in Matthew 24:7-8. He says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences, the black and pale horse, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." And sorrow is tied to birth pains. Something is in the process of being born. So I'm sure most of you have been watching the news. Well, I guess before I go there, let me read Revelation 6:5-6, the seal. "And when he'd opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see, and behold, and a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the fourth beast say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see that you hurt not the oil and the wine." So what is a black horse? Could it be describing this inflation? We haven't had this level of hyperinflation for at least 40 years. And it's going to get worse. Okay? And what are they fighting for over in Europe? Energy, oil, gas. And wine is associated with harvest and economy. So the black horse represents the collapse of an economy. So back to the news. So how's our food supply situation? We know we have all kinds of supply issues for materials and goods and everything else, but what about our food supply? What are you hearing in the news? It's not good. There's droughts, there's floods, fires. They're really concerned. China just bought, just yesterday I heard, a lot of wheat. They're buying up all kinds of our farm produce and beef. And another thing that China's buying from us? Pardon? Farms. Oh, yeah, they have a lot of farms. Oil. Do you know that we're selling millions of barrels of oil to China out of our strategic reserves? Why would we do that? Oh, I'm going political. I need to back up. But you see what this black horse could represent, the things that we're seeing now. So I believe we're in, could be possibly the fourth seal and ready to go into the fifth seal. Revelation 6, 7, and 8. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard a voice of the fourth beast saying, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell that followed him. And power was given unto him over the fourth part of the earth to kill with a sword, with hunger, with death, and with beasts of the earth. So let me take back what I just said. I think we're probably closer to the third seal than the fourth seal. But what is the pale horse? War and economic collapse creates famine and pestilence. So Yahshua describes the fifth seal in Revelation. In Matthew 24:9, he says, They shall deliver you up to be afflicted, they shall kill you, you shall be hated for all nations for my name's sake, and then shall many be offended, and they shall betray one another, shall hate one another, and many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold, but he that endures to the end, the same shall be saved. Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. I just can't believe some of the things I'm hearing on the news that they're pushing legislatively to try to force things that Yahweh hates. Right. And the passion and the money and that they're to try to undo what the Supreme Court did with Roe versus Wade. Why are they so intent on killing the unborn? It makes absolutely no sense to me. So we are saying this today. In Revelation 6, 9, and 10. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? So Yeshua is describing what's going on in the fifth seal in Matthew 24. And the fifth seal is the persecution of the saints. How much time do I have? What time is it? Pardon? It's 1:20? 1:07. Thank you. All right, I got to get this wrapped up. Okay, so now the sixth seal. The sixth seal. In Matthew 24, Yeshua says, Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. And the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. This language here is the language of the battle of Gog and Magog, which begins after the six seals. Again, this is opinion. And this term after, immediately after, and you'll have to ask Eddie on this one. He did some research. That word after can also be interpreted alongside or at the same time. Okay. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels, and I have in parentheses there. I didn't move on, did I? I'm sorry. Sorry. So I'm in the last verse on there. And he shall send his angels. Angels, another translation is messengers. The 144,000, possibly, with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. The greater exodus is after the sixth seal also. Again, my opinion. So we look at, it's not working. My clicker quit working. There we go. So in Revelation, and I beheld when he opened the sixth seal, lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair. The moon shall become as blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. Then She is shaken of a mighty wind. The heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of its place. The kings of the earth and great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bondman and every free man hid themselves in dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains, Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. So the language here that's used is the same that's in Joel chapter 2 and verse 10, which says, The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. So what is the context of Joel 2:10? It's indicating that there will be a great army that comes against Israel, unlike any in the world. We can also see that in Ezekiel 39 and Isaiah 13:10. In Eddie's opinion, that Isaiah 13:10, which talks about Babylon, includes America being attacked at the same time that they go after Israel. So if we look at Joel chapter 2 in its entirety, it says, Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, sound the alarm in my holy mountain, let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh cometh, for it is nigh at hand. Now here it says it's the day of Yahweh is nigh at hand. It hasn't happened yet. So the day of Yahweh, we're in the sixth seal now. The day of Yahweh has not happened, but it's very close, indicating that the day of Yahweh begins at the end of the sixth seal. It is a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness. As the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns the land. Is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. It sounds like it is the battle of Gog and Magog. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of the mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devours the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. And they shall march every one on his way. And they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path. They shall fall upon the sword. They shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb upon the houses. They shall enter into windows like a thief. Now verse 10. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark. The stars shall withdraw their shining. And Yahweh shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. Who is that army and who is that camp? Could it be those that have returned from the four corners of the earth to Jerusalem, to the land? For he is strong that executes the word. For the day of Yahweh is great and very terrible, and who can abide it? Therefore also now, says Yahweh, turn even to me with all your heart, with fasting and with weeping and with mourning. And rend your heart and not your garments, and turn to Yahweh your God, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and of great kindness, and repents him of the evil. Who knoweth if he will return and repent and leave a blessing behind him, a meat offering and a drink offering unto Yahweh our God. Now could it be at this time, this is the time when Israel is looking at total defeat by this army? And so they begin to fast. They begin to pray for deliverance from this great army. Blow the trumpet in Zion. Sanctify a fast. Call a solemn assembly. Gather the people. Sanctify the congregation. Assemble the elders. Gather the children that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber, and the bride out of her closet. Let the priests and the ministers of Yahweh weep before the porch and the altar, and let them say, Spare thy people, O Yahweh, and give not heritage to reproach, that the heathen should rule over them. Wherefore should they say among the people, where is their God? Then will Yahweh be jealous for his land and pity his people. Yea, Yahweh will answer and say to his people, behold, I will send you corn and wine and oil, and ye shall be satisfied therewith. And I will no more make you a reproach among the heathen, but I will remove far from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face toward the sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. Fear not, O land, be glad and rejoice, for Yahweh will do great things. Sounds like the battle of Gog and Magog. It sounds like Yahweh saving his people from this great army. Okay, I'm going to go a little fast now. Ezekiel 39, 1 through 8. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog. Thus says Yahweh, behold, I am against you, Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you back, leave you but the sixth part of you, and will cause you to come up from the north parts, and will bring you upon the mountains of Israel. And I will smite the bow out of your left hand, and will cause your arrows to fall out of your right hand. And you shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, you and all your bands, and the people that are with thee. I will give you unto ravenous birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. But thou shalt fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, says Yahweh. I will send a fire on Magog, upon them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name any more. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel. Behold, it is come, and it is done, says Yahweh. This is the day whereof I have spoken. So in verse 7 it says, I will make my holy name known among the midst of my people Israel. Again, it's the same story of the children of Israel coming out of Egypt, how he made his name known among all the nations, among his people, by delivering them from the great Egyptian army. The end of the exile. I'm not going to go through all these, but again, the story is the same. The end of the exile is now at hand. Once Gog and Magog is destroyed, that sets up the end of the exile. But where are we at that point? I want to read a little bit out of Revelation. So let me. So do you see the connection between the sun shall not give her light, the sun shall be darkened, the stars of heaven shall not give their light? How it's tied to this battle of Gog and Magog. Okay, the connection's there. So we can see where we are in terms of prophecy. Our journey back to the land, Gog and Magog tries to destroy all his people because we're all there. God comes down, he fights for his people, he saves us. And then the end of the exile is declared. And he mentions this in Hosea. I want to bring this in, and then we'll get it wrapped up. In Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6. So when does the greater exodus begin? After the sixth seal and when the day of Yahweh begins. In Hosea 6:1 it says, well, let me back up. I need to read this one too. In Ezekiel 34, as a shepherd seeks out his flock in the day that he is among his sheep that are scattered, so I will seek out my sheep, and I will deliver them out of all places where they have been scattered, in the cloudy and dark day. The cloudy and dark day, what was that? The battle of Gog and Magog. I mean, it's not just a one-day event, because remember, the day begins in the dark. Most of us believe that, okay? The day begins when the sun sets. So there's a dark period before the sun comes up. So this dark and cloudy day is over a period of time. He says, I will bring them out from among the people, gather them from the countries, and I will bring them to their own land, and I will feed them upon the mountains of Israel, by the rivers in all the inhabited places of the country. Hosea 6, come and let us return to Yahweh. What does returning to Yahweh mean? What goes along with returning to Yahweh? Returning to his ways, returning to Torah. How many people have you seen in the last decade that have become interested in the beginning of the book, not just the end of the book? Are you seeing a movement there of the Holy Spirit? Come, let us return to Yahweh, coming back to the Torah, for he hath torn and he will heal us. He hath smitten and he will bind us. After 2 days he will revive us, and in the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Another prophecy. After 2 days, what time period is that? Again, this is interpretation. Right now. When Yeshua rose from the dead to now, how many years has that been? 2,000? 1,000 years is a day. After 2 days, he will revive us. In the third day, he will raise us up. The beginning of the 1,000-year millennium. So I'm going to skip through this. So Revelation 7 talks about the 144,000. I believe the 144,000 are the messengers that Yeshua talks about in Matthew 24, where he says, I will send my angels. The sound of the trump, I will send my angels to gather my elect from the four corners of the earth. I believe it's 144,000. Because in Revelation 7:9, he says, after this I beheld, and lo, there is a great multitude, which no man can number, of all nations, kindreds, peoples, and tongues. They stood before the throne, clothed with white robes and palms in their hand. And one of the elders answered and said, what are these arrayed in white robes, and where have they come? He said unto him, Sir, you know. These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So when the beginning of the exile starts, our journey back to the land, there will be 3.5 years of a great tribulation. These are the dark and cloudy days. And at the end of that journey, when Gog and Magog will come, God will rise up and deliver us. It says in 15, where was I? Yeah, go ahead. These are they which came out of great tribulation. Therefore they are before the throne of God, serving him day and night. They shall hunger no more, thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. Now, why does it mention that they shall hunger no more, thirst any more, neither shall sunlight on them? Doesn't that describe some of the trials that they went through on their way from Egypt to the Promised Land? These are us. These are who have made that journey back to the land. For the Lamb which is in the midst of them, or midst of the throne, shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living fountains of water, and shall wipe away all their tears. This is quoted from Isaiah 49:10.
says, they shall hunger nor thirst, neither shall the heat or sun smite them, for they shall have mercy. He shall have mercy on them, and shall lead them, even by springs of water shall he guide them. And I will make all my mountains a way, my highways shall be exalted, and behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north, and from the west, and from the land of Sinim. This is what Revelation is quoting. This is the journey, physical journey back to the land, where he will have some of the 144,000 leading us by springs of water and guiding us back to the land. So the ultimate travail is the battle of Gog and Magog. The ultimate travail is the battle of Gog and Magog. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with sun, moon under her feet, and her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, travailing birth, and pain to be delivered. So who is the woman? And what is this sign, this great wonder? That word wonder, the sign, it goes back to that monumental pillar we talked about earlier. The sign of them is cloud by day and fire by night. And the 12 stars, the 12 tribes of Israel. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. What's about to happen? Zion is about ready to be filled with her children, with us, because we've journeyed back to the land. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Shall a nation be born at once? As soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Again, this travail, the ultimate travail, is the battle of Gog and Magog. So I will bring to birth and not cause to bring forth. In other words, am I going to bring the people to the land of Israel for the nations to come against her to destroy her people? Am I going to allow that to happen? No. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring brought forth, says Yahweh? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, says God? Rejoice ye with Jerusalem, and be glad with her. All ye that love her, rejoice for the joy with her, all ye that mourn for her. And when you see this, your heart shall rejoice, your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of Yahweh shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. Now this term, bones shall flourish, reminds me of the dry bones coming to life. So could this be the connection of when the resurrection happens? At the same time when Gog and Magog is defeated. And last verse. The sound of the great trumpet, it is tied to the greater exodus. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall beat off from the channel of the river unto the stream of Egypt, and ye shall be gathered one by one, and ye children of Israel. And it shall come to pass in that day that great trumpet shall be blown, and they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt, and shall worship Yahweh in the holy mountain at Jerusalem. So the great trump is connected to the greater exodus. So is the greater exodus scriptural? Is the original exodus story a future prophecy of a greater physical exodus back to the promised land? I didn't bring this in, but read 1 Corinthians 10. It's a story to us, to upon whom the ends of the ages, or to whom the end of the exile has come. And there are examples, the fathers of those coming out of Egypt, heading to the promised land. It says those examples were for us because we're going to go through the same things on the way back to the land. Yes, we have exciting times coming.
Now, for those that are faint-hearted and see the trouble ahead, do you really want to go through that? You know, we've seen a lot of good brothers and sisters pass away untimely lately, and we ask why. I'd like to leave with you Isaiah 57:1. Why are we having so many of our brothers and sisters seem to pass at an untimely death? Could it be? The answer here is in Isaiah 57:1. It says, "The righteous perisheth, and no man lay it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come." This journey that's we're about to embark on is going to be a tough journey, but we have our Maker that's going to help us. So we have no reason to fear. But for those that he knows it will be very hard and difficult, has he taken so they won't have to endure the evil to come? Just like to leave you with that thought. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, give Eddie Chumley a call and he'll answer. Okay. May Yahweh bless you.